So let's do a little bit of housekeeping with our data. First thing we're going to focus on is making sure that all of the data has appended correctly in all the columns that it's supposed to. And I ran into this a little bit using the API connector. Usually your first request may or may not have this setting right here, add timestamp, checked or not. So if you don't have it checked, then you won't get a timestamp in your request, and it'll just show up with this status code error 0. But if you do request a timestamp, I'll show you down here, then you do get one, and you get the error code, and it shifts all of the data to the right because it inserts this extra column. And as you see, I kind of ran into that when I was testing, building out, some of the data. So we had something in the series to look at. If you go all the way down here to the bottom, you can see right here there's a disconnect, right, where I've now have the name and the IDs and the symbols like all jacked up, right? So what we need is for this to either be on or off. I'm going to take it off, and then I'm going to save it because I don't need it. But this is going to force me now to make sure that I have all of the data that's only the non-timestamped data. So I'm going to go through here, and there's a couple hundred rows that have timestamp associated data, and I'm just going to make sure I take those out. So let's see, I'm going to delete those rows and come up here, and this is really good to just go through and just look at everything. That's what we're going to do here to make sure that way when we feed the data in to our dashboard that we're not running into anything where like there's a date in like a name column or something like that. So all right, it looks like we need to take care of this first bit here. Okay, cool. So let's see. And this is still off a bit. Yep, see, we had a timestamp request right down here. And I think that's how this initial header populates. So what we can actually do too, just to make sure that we're on the right page 100%, is just go and delete all the data that we brought in here for test, because it doesn't matter. We can run this not as much as we want, but kind of a lot before the limit on the API is reached. So if I just run this again, it'll repopulate all the headers and repopulate the data. Now we'll only have one set here. Actually, let me do the overwrite. Okay, there we go. And then from here on out, we'll do append. So the next request I do should be an append, and then this should match up. And we just want to make sure that that is good to go, so that way every single additional request that's inbound comes in and is all good to go. So here's the line, and let's look through that to see what happened. And it looks like everything is lining up all the way across the board. Cool. And that's what we want. We just want to make sure that that's consistent. And initially when I had started this off, I kind of ran into that. So I just want to show you how to debug this this issue here. So the other thing that we're going to do for data that's going to be a little bit tedious, but we're going to go through and all these headers, we're going to give them a better name so than what they have. Instead of like data symbol ID, we're just going to do like ID, name, symbol, and so on and so forth. So you can go through here and do this. This will get a little bit frustrating because you can't delete any columns when you're doing this type of data ingest, because it doesn't match to the name of the header. Like this row right here, when the data comes in, it just goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It doesn't match and see like, oh, did I put the number of market pairs in the correct column? It just, I could call this anything and it would just fill data in this column right here in L, right? So naming these will make it so that it's a little bit more readable and easier to use when we move on to the data visualization, so that way everything's pretty good. So I suggest going through, there's a couple of there's a couple of columns in this, but I strongly suggest to you, you can get by without doing this, but I strongly suggest you go through and change all of these to something that looks, you know, something more like this. So if I say like, this is USD price, so this would be like price underscore USD, easy, right? Volume 24 hours, right? Something like that. So I'm going to go through and do that. Pause the video, run through it. I'm going to do the same, and I'm going to change all mine. And I'll show you a sweet little Google Sheets hack that you can use to kind of get all of these done at once. So if you just want to take these down to a quicker, you just want to, you know, form these up at a different speed, right? We can go ahead and copy this initial thing that all of these columns share. Data, symbol, platform, symbol, space, right? And we can do Control F. We can find that. We found 5 of those. Hit this More Options button, and we'll just replace it with nothing, and we'll just do Replace All. And then everything will be good to go in there. The only thing we'll have to watch out for is duplicates. So like ID is used a couple times in the schema, so we'll maybe call this like ID2. And with this, we can go ahead and do the same thing, Control F. And this is data dash, so we don't care about that. We don't want that. We'll replace all of those. You see now everything is looking a lot more like English, right? So that's awesome, right? We can leave these tags here because we don't really care about the tags, but status, let's get rid of that. We'll get rid of that status bit there. And we're just sort of automating away that manual set of clicks we would have had to have done. So we'll leave all the tags. And we got all of these other nice English, just straight up text fields that we don't have to worry about all of that mess in front of them before. So now this is like a more clean, manageable data structure. It's going to be easier to work with. So this is really the best practice. You can go forward with all that messy data, but if you don't check that your series is appending correctly down the line, and you don't make sure your columns are readable so you can kind of get through them easily, you're going to be kind of just putting a little bit of a rock in your path to success there.